In this video, we're going to go over everything you need to know about the projects module. We're going to start with how you can use the projects module as a standalone application, but we're later going to see how you can use it in conjunction with other modules, such as the sales module, planning, timesheets, and even accounting and documents. We'll look at how we can set up a budget for our projects, how we can timesheet against projects, have it linked directly to the sales order, how we can plan our resources using the planning module, and even how we can submit expenses that will tie into our overall project budget as well as our sales order. Now, let's first begin with going into projects and taking a look at some of the default configurations and some of the configurations that we turned on. So when you first click into projects, you're going to see a Kanban view. By default, you're not going to see stages, but you can enable them in configurations, and we'll take a look at that in just a second. So you have all of your projects here. We have stages. You can obviously create new stages as needed. You can move around some of these cards, which represent your projects. You'll see some vital information regarding your projects on these cards, such as the project name, if it has a customer attached, the plan dates, the number of tasks inside, milestones, planned hours, any activities you have scheduled, whether or not it's on track, who's assigned to the project as a project manager. And this menu here will bring you to much more functionalities and features for your particular project. On the top right here, we can see this in a list view. We can also see our project overview, what's in each stage and what's due. So I have one project here that's for the month of April that is in the new stage. But as you have more projects, you'll see a quick glance and overview of all of your projects. And then we have the calendar view as well as your activity view for any activities or outstanding activities that you need to complete for each one of your projects. Of course, you can use the standard sorting and filtering on the top menu bar here. So if you need to sort, filter any of the functionality or any of these records out, you can do so. Now let's go into configurations and look at our settings. So under settings here, we have most of them enabled. So the ones we're going to look at today, you can utilize subtasks. So a task can have a subtask. We can have task dependency. So if you need to have one task completed before another one can start, you can do that as well. We configured our project stages here, so all of our projects are going to be within a stage on our main view. We have milestone tracking, so this milestone tracking is both for billing as well as overall project phasing or milestones. So you don't necessarily need billing or sales orders in order to use milestones. We have timesheet management, planning, so we can use the planning module in order to plan out some of our resources over time. And a couple of things down here that we're not going to look at today, but we can have customer ratings. So on one of your stages within a project, you can have customer ratings go out to your customers on, let's say, a monthly basis, and they will receive an email to rate their satisfaction. And all of that can be stored in the system so that you can view the customer satisfaction by employee or by team if necessary. You also have recurring tasks here, and this is just to set tasks that need to happen on a recurring basis. So you can schedule those tasks to automatically be created on, let's say, a daily, weekly, or monthly basis. On the top bar here, we have some of our default reporting where we can look at our task analysis. We can look at all of our own tasks, or sorry, all tasks. We can look at your own tasks that you're assigned to. And one thing to note here is that for your own tasks, you can have your own stages that represent the tasks that you need to complete. So you can manage your own tasks without interfering with the overall project. So depending on how your work is laid out, you can have all of your tasks here that you're assigned to, manage your own view, and come in and do this work as needed. Now on our projects view here, we're going to look at some general settings inside of one of our projects that already exist. So let's go into our menu bar here and click on settings. And we'll see that we can name the tasks. So right now they're just named as tasks, but we can name them anything we want. The customer attached to this project. So if there is a customer attached to this project, we can set it here, but it doesn't necessarily need one. We can set any tags that are necessary so that we can do some filtering, sorting, searching, and reporting on later. We can set the project manager here, which we have as myself. the planned date for this entire project, start to finish, and the allocated hours for this project. So how many hours does this project plan on taking? In our description here, we can write project notes or any description, any information that we need to keep track of. Under settings here, we'll see the sale order item. This doesn't necessarily need to be filled out because we can fill it out on the task level, but this will allow the task to default to this sale order item. And this is going to be only important when we're billing timesheets against a project. This analytic account here, if you're familiar with Odoo, then you know this analytic account is going to allow us to track our costs and revenue associated with this project. And we're going to do a deep dive into analytic accounts a little bit later on in this video. The visibility here, we have invited portal users and internal users. So this is an important note because we can share this project with outside individuals. They can view the progress of this project. They can view the tasks and all the information in the tasks with limited ability to, let's say, interact with the project, but they can view the progress of it without having to be an internal user of the system. In just a second, we'll take a look at what that might look like. Down below, we have all the different settings. Some of these we turned on in configuration, so we selected them as important for this particular project, but all of these options don't need to be selected for each project. So for example, we have our subtasks, so we are enabling subtasks, task dependencies, milestones, timesheets, planning, whether or not this project is billable to a customer, and we're also using the documents application to store documents related to this project. So any files or images that we upload within the project will be stored in a workplace or workspace within our documents module. Under invoicing here, you can see that we have different employees with the different sale order items that they are billing towards, with their unit rates as well as their hourly cost. Now you can override these hourly costs here, but by default they are pulled from the employee's record under HR settings. And this unit price is going to be pulled from the sale order line. This allows you to default when a user is billing against a project, it's automatically going to bill against a specific sale order line, so that makes it easy to invoice the customer later on. Now this is not important if you're not using this project to bill against a client project, but keep in mind that this is a very powerful feature. So now that we've seen some general settings, let's look at what this project might look like when we are sharing it with an outside individual. So here you can see that we can share a read-only version or an editable version. Let's look at what the share read-only looks like. We can share it with an individual by selecting their contact, or we can copy this link and send it over to them. So I'm just going to copy this link, and I'm going to go into a new incognito window, and we'll just paste that in there so that we can see what this might look like at a quick glance. So here we see our project, sale order number 12, final project, with all the tasks, and we can see that we can click into one of these tasks, and we can see some information regarding the task. We can write comments in here so that sends to the chatter inside of the specific task, and we could communicate back and forth with the progress of the overall project and individual tasks. So if I wrote a note here, I can write a note, and this will appear in the chatter of this planning task. So let's go ahead and take a look at that really quickly. We'll go back to our projects. We'll click into sale order number 12. We'll look at our task here, and we'll see that there is some information or some communication from customer 3 who we have shared the project link with. And the reason why this says customer 3 is because that's who is assigned to this task and the overall project as a whole. So now before we go too much in depth with that, let's get an overview of the projects module as you're working on a single project. So we have our Kanban view here once again, similar to our overall projects view with different stages and all of our tasks laid out as needed. We still have all of our different views on the top bar here. We can create as many new tasks as necessary. So we can click on new here. We can say new task, and we can assign it to someone, or we can leave it blank for now. We can go into this task and look at all of the functionality here. On this main bar, or the main page here, We have the task name, the project it's associated with, and this is defaulted to the project that we created it in. We can set the milestone that it is pertaining to, any assignees, tags, and review needed here is a custom field that I created. And you can create custom fields just by clicking on this add a property button. And we can create new properties, new fields that are needed to use throughout the life cycle of this project. So if we need to store specific information, we can click on add a property and we can add new properties and edit the type of property it is. Maybe it's a many to one field where we need to store information about another record within the database, or we need to create a new text field, a checkbox. You can do that all by using the add property button. Here we can set the allocated hours. So how many hours do we think that this task is going to take? So maybe we say it's going to take 10 hours. And then we can plan this task out in our Gantt view. And then as we bill against this task, this percentage will increase. Any information that we need to store about this task can be added below in the description. Keep in mind you can use the backslash to add lists, columns, headers, and images. Anytime we store a document to this, either inside of our description or by attaching documents in the chatter, it will be stored in our documents module. Under our timesheets tab, we can timesheet against this project. So I can add a line here, and it's going to default to the employee as well as the sale order item that I am tied to on the overall project. I can write in the description here and the amount of hours I worked. So we can write test, and maybe we worked 2 hours on this. Now by default, this is going to show the remaining hours, the allocated hours, or we can elect to use this start button on the top menu here. So if we click on start, it's going to run a timer, and then we can stop it when we are done working on this particular task. Under subtasks here, we can create new subtasks that are in this overall scope of this task. So if I click on add a line here, I can select existing tasks, or I can create a new one. Now, something important to note is that when we create a new subtask, it does not have the project here by default. And this is important and a great function because if you wanted to, you can assign a task to a different project. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, let's say that you have developers inside of your overall organization, and they have their separate project that they work out of. And you want to assign, say, hey, this is a bug fix. I need to assign it to another project. Maybe it's a bug fix for a developer's project. They're not going to come in and manage their tasks within our project, but this is still important for our overall project. So we want to keep track of it within our final project, sale order number 12 here, but we're going to assign it and it's going to live inside of another project. Or we can elect to make it a subtask within our own project, and if that's the case, then we will see it on our task list under our final project. Under our block by, we can set any task that this task is blocked by. So this will not allow us to complete the task until the blocked by tasks are completed. And this is also important for our Gantt view. So if we wanted to look at our Gantt view and see things that are blocked, we can look at the different connections between tasks at a quick glance. Under extra info here, just some default information. If there's a parent task here, so we have blocked by, we can also have the parent task here. We have an analytic account, so this task is tied to this analytic account, and that's for the overall project. We see the email CC, so anytime we have communications with our chatter by sending a message, this email can get CC'd. And we can also set a cover image for this project. And that cover image looks like this. So we can also set it by clicking these dots and clicking set cover image. Now we can go over to our Gantt view to look at our Gantt. We'll move over to our overall project in April. So this project I planned for April. We see that the planning has been worked on, and phase 1 is blocked by planning. So we see this line here. If we move this over, we'll see that we get a little warning here, let us know that planning needs to happen before phase 1. So if we need to, we can click this to move it over, and it will default to where it needs to be in order for none of these warnings to appear. Now in this overall Gantt view, you do see our different milestones that we have set up for this project. We'll take a look at this in just a second, but we have our planning, our implementation phase 1, implementation phase 2, and finally our go live. On the left here, we have our different employees. So when we want to plan a task out, we can plan it to a particular employee, and the system's going to tell us the allocated hours over a sum of hours. So based on their working time here, they are set to work 40 hours Monday through Friday. And based on that, we have 60 hours planned for phase 1. So John is allocated 60 out of 160 hours for the month of April. Now keep in mind, if you're using the time off module, another module that this system integrates with, or this application integrates with, any date that they have time off will be grayed out and it will not be considered in the overall planning. So as you see here, I have phase 1 that is from the 12th to the 21st, but it's only going to allocate those 60 hours for the 12th up to the 15th and the 17th to the 21st. So it's not going to take into consideration the 15th and 16th because those days were off for the weekend. We'll take a little bit deeper dive into some planning aspects of everything a little bit later on in the video, but I want you to get a quick overview of what we're looking at. So now, of course, going back to the Kanban view, we can drag and drop these, move them into different stages as needed. You can do that from here or within the project task itself. So we can click on moving it here, sprint in progress or sprint complete, and saving that. And we go back to the sale order, we see that moved over to sprint complete. Now going back to our project's overview, we can look at our milestones for this project. So let's click on milestones here, and we'll see all the different milestones for this particular project. We named them over here. They're not tied to any specific sale order item, and when we look at products, this will make more sense. We have the quantity percentage of the overall project that this pertains to. So once we complete planning, then 25% of our project is completed. Obviously the project that this is relevant to, the deadline for this particular milestone, and whether or not it has been reached. And we can also view the tasks that are tied to the planning milestone. We can also view key metrics for this particular project. So if we wanted to, we can look at our task analysis, we can look at the timesheet and planning analysis. And this timesheet and planning analysis will give us the planned hours as well as the effective hours, the remaining hours, planned costs, effective costs. So we get a quick overview of the different amounts of money we spent on a particular project based on the costs of each one of those individuals that have timesheeted and the people that are assigned to future tasks. We can change what we want to measure here and what we want to look at. We can see the effective billable hours, non-billable hours, the effective revenue and planned revenues for a particular project. And that's all going to be tied to a sale order. So again, we looked at some brief introduction to the projects module, utilizing the full scope. But if you want to, you might need to just create a simple project where we're not going to bill, maybe we don't plan. Maybe we do want to timesheet our work, but it's not going to be billable. It's just going to be for employee timesheets. And we can do that fairly simply by creating a new project. So maybe we call this internal R&D. Now we create a new blank project. We can create our stages manually here. We can use some examples. So maybe this is software development. So we'll use this for my project, and it'll go ahead and create those different stages for us. And from here, we can simply create new tasks. So maybe this is, let's just be generic here, name this task 1. We can create quick tasks, just task 2, task 3. And now we have some of our tasks. None of these are assigned yet, but we can easily go in here and assign them. So we can assign them to an individual. So maybe we assign this to Kevin, or we can assign this to Jane. But you can also assign them to multiple people. So maybe we assign this to Jane and Sarah. This task might take us 15 hours to complete. We want to complete this, let's say, by the 1st. We can give this a brief description of what we're going to accomplish here, but we'll just save that for now. and we'll go ahead and plan that. So now that we have some people assigned to it, maybe we want to go ahead and plan that in our Gantt view. So we can go over to our Gantt view here, and we can assign a new task. So we'll just say um, maybe we assign this for the 27th. So we'll just hit the magnifying glass here. This is going to bring up all of our tasks within our project. We can select all tasks or just the task that we want to plan, and we can select this. And as you see, the system by default pulls up both of our tasks here and assigns them to the individual. So each individual is now allocated to this project. So we have task 3, internal R&D for Jane as well as Sarah. We can click onto that task to view the task as a whole. Now we might want to timesheet against this task. So we'll go back to our Kanban view. Let's say that we're starting to work on this. We can click inside. First, we might want to green light it. So maybe our project manager needs to green light it when this task is ready to go. We see that it's due in 4 days. So let's go ahead and bill some hours to it. So maybe I'll select Jane. So it's going to default to the employee you're logged in as. But for this example, obviously I'm going to switch it to Jane. Maybe I'm going to do initial research. And we can bill 2 hours against this. So now our hours are going to be billed against this task, and it's going to appear in our timesheeting module. So now that we built some time, we can go ahead and look at our timesheets for the week in our timesheets module so our managers can look and review our timesheets. So I'm going to go to timesheets here, all timesheets, and we see Jane billed to internal R&D, and she billed 2 hours. And these are non-billable hours. So if I wanted to, I can look at non-billable hours, and Jane has billed 2 non-billable hours because they're not billed to a particular client. So this helps us with reporting. We want to see who's billing to non-billable tasks, who's billing to billable tasks, and also this is important. Let's say that you need to timesheet for all of your employees. You can have projects and tasks that are just created as internal purposes. So for example, you might have a task that is learning, and you want people to bill 4 hours a week to learning, so they can bill against those tasks right from either the task itself or in the timesheets module, and then describe what they were researching or learning that might not be billed to clients, so you can keep track of your utilization over time. If we go to our view here, our pivot view, we can look at some of the metrics. We can look at our timesheet costs for each individual for the month of February. We can do this by day, week, month. So here we have it by day, and we can look at all the different timesheets that these employees have spent, as well as the timesheet costs. So I did mention earlier that these timesheet costs are pulled from our employee record, so we'll take a look at that in just a second. More reporting under our timesheets, we can look at our timesheets by employee, and that kind of brings us to our same view we were just looking at, but we have more functions here. So we want to look at non-billable hours as well as total hours spent and billable hours. So we see Jane here for February 2023 has billed 2 hours total, and both of those hours were non-billable hours. On the other hand, here we have Kevin, hours spent 41, 12 to non-billable, and 29 to billable tasks. We can also see the timesheet costs and revenue for each employee. So because Jane has not billed to any task that is tied to a sale order line, they have zero revenue. We did not set a cost price for Jane on our employee profile, so this is 0. But if we did, then we'll just have some costs associated without any revenue. So let's look at our employee record. So let's go into employees. We can look at Jane. We go to HR settings. We'll see their hourly cost. And let's say that their hourly cost is $50 an hour. So we'll just add that to Jane. And I believe Kevin here has a $100 per hour. We have $50 for John. And we'll set $75 for Sarah. Now you'll want to update those over time as they increase. That can be your all-in cost or just the base salary cost. That's solely up to you and how you want to manage your cost allocation. So now that we have a brief overview of the projects, once again, let's go into inventory and look at some of the products that we can configure to tie those all with our sale. So inventory, we'll go to products. We have some products created already. I will look at our services products. and we'll look at the engineering consultant. So I created this engineering consultant, and now let's run through some of the different attributes. So we have product type. So we gave this a name, engineering consultant. We gave this a product type. It's going to be a service, and we have our invoicing policy. Now, the invoicing policy is very important for the configuration of your different projects and sale order items. So first we have prepaid or fixed price. And prepaid or fixed price is going to be important when you're billing a set number of hours and the customer is going to prepay them, or for an entire project. So for example, if you're going to say a project costs $10,000 regardless of the time that we spend on it, then you would want to use prepaid or fixed price. If we're going to base it on the timesheets that we enter, so we're going to give the employee a rate. So let's say we're selling engineering consultant, we'll sell it at $100 an hour, and we're going to bill the client based on as many hours as our engineering consultant bills against the project, and we might bill that on a weekly, monthly, bi-weekly basis, whatever it is. That's going to be based on timesheets. Following that, we can do based on milestones, and milestones is going to be tied to the overall project. So what we looked at earlier, we see milestones, and we've seen that we can set different percentage of completion, and that is going to tie in with our project as a whole. So let's say we have a product that's called, overall project budget or something, or whatever the project name needs to be, and we say that it's going to be built on milestones. The overall project might be $10,000, but we have 10 milestones, each at a different percentage, and as we complete those milestones, the system's going to prompt us to invoice the customer for that portion of the sale order or project. And they do not have to be set amounts. So it doesn't have to be, 10 milestones is 10% each. It can be milestone 1 is 25%, and milestone 2 is 5%, milestone 3 is 35%, and that allows us to bill based on milestones automatically. There's also based on delivered quantities manual, and this is where if you want to just bill same thing as milestones, but without tying it directly into milestones, and you're just going to bill the client as you see fit for a particular subset of the project. And we'll take a look at several different items here and how we can utilize them. Create on order here, it's either going to be nothing, a task, a project and a task, or a project. What this does is as soon as you create a sale order and confirm it, it's going to either create a task within a particular project, it's going to create a brand new project with a single task, a project as a whole, or nothing at all. We have nothing at all selected for this profile, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we can't use it within a project. That just means that we want to create and handle the project ourselves. We don't want the system to generate anything for us. And you can play around with these different options to see what fits best for you. Under plan services here, whether or not we want to plan using the planning module the hours that we're going to sell here. This makes the most sense when you're going to base this on a prepaid or fixed price. Let's say that you're selling a 100-hour pack of hours and you want to plan out those hours for some period of time, or you're basing it on timesheets and you know how many time or how many hours you are estimating for this project as a whole. We have our unit of measure here, which is hours for this particular profile. Also under plan services, we have what we're going to plan it as. So what kind of resource is this? We have different resources that we configured in the planning module. Here we're going to default to an engineer. So first, let's take a look at creating a new project. We'll just call this, overall project. And this can be sold. We're going to make it a service type, and this is going to be based on milestones. We'll create a project when this overall project is sold. We can select a project template, so something that we want to duplicate. So if you wanted to create different project templates that get created when you create a project, you can do that. Or you can elect to leave this blank. It's going to create just a brand new project and you can manage it as a whole. We can set the workspace template, so where you want to store documents. If not, it will create a brand new one for us. Whether or not we want to plan these services. So we're not going to plan these services because it doesn't necessarily make sense to plan these services for our overall project. And we'll just leave it as units because we're going to sell this overall project in milestones. We won't worry about the sale price here because maybe we're going to customize this based on the project. So let's go ahead and save that, and let's go sell this in our sale order and take a look at how we can set this all up. So we'll have a new sale order, create new. Maybe we select a customer. I'm just going to type in a new customer 4 here. We're going to add a product, and we're going to call this our overall product or project. We're going to sell 1 unit, and maybe this cost $10,000. So now we're going to confirm this, and once we confirm this, it's going to create a project. Keep in mind, you can do all of the normal stuff you do with sales orders. You'll send this over to the customer. They can sign the contract for this overall project. You can write different terms and conditions regarding this project, add sections and notes to this project as a whole. So we'll go ahead and save or confirm this. And now you see that a project was created with 1 milestone by default, but we can configure those milestones. Now, depending on how you want to set this up, you can have 5 quantity for overall projects, which will create 5 milestones. But I like to keep it as 1, and then we'll build fractions of it. So now we can set up our milestones. Let's click into milestones here. And we see 1 overall, but we'll just do this as 20%, and we'll call this planning. We can create a new one here. We'll say phase 1. And this is, we'll create a new one. We'll say phase 2 and complete. So we'll do, let's say 20, 20, and 40. So here you'll see that for planning, once we're finished planning, we're going to bill the customer 20% of the overall $10,000. After phase 1, 20%. After phase 2, 20%. And after it's completed, we'll bill them the rest of 40%. We can give each of these a deadline if we already have a decent deadline set. So maybe we do this as the 3rd. We do this as the 10th. Oops. March 10th. March 17th. And maybe we have this planned as March 24th. So now we have our milestone set up. We have our project configured. Let's take a look at what that looks like inside of the projects module. But before we do that, I just want to mention that once we sell anything related to a project, an analytic account is automatically created for us, and this is going to track all of the costs and revenue associated with this project. It's automatically going to be created and pulled onto the project and the sale order. So anytime that we bill a customer and we create an invoice, that revenue is going to be tied to that project and analytic account. And anytime we timesheet against the project, it's going to be pulled against this overall analytic account as well. So now let's go into projects. We'll take a look at sale order number 13 that we just created. We can go into our settings here and take a look at all of the different settings. So we decided that this might take us most of March, so I'll just give it a planned start and end date. We have our allocated hours here, so maybe this, let's say that this is going to take us maybe 50 hours total to complete. We can write in some project description based on some pre-sale analysis. Maybe we did some back and forth in our CRM. We created the sale order. Now we're going to copy over some notes into our description here, or we can even link to our CRM opportunity if necessary. Under settings, we'll see that we have our subtasks, task dependencies, milestones, timesheet planning, documents. So this documents workspace was created for us, whether or not it's billable. One thing we did not touch on is this invoicing. So we have create tasks by sending an email to, and based on the domain of your instance of Odoo, you can email in tasks. So if the customer, for example, needs to email in tasks for you to complete, they can email tasks into this project. And that's particularly helpful for lots of instances. One thing I could think of off the top of my head is if you're billing someone and they have, let's say, a retainer that they bill monthly for, and based on the things that they need you to fix, they'll just email you into this task list, let's say for website development project, and based on changes that they want to their project, they can just email in a task and you have this project set for them and you can bill against that. Under invoicing here, we can add employees. So maybe Danny's going to be involved. We have the sale order item. But for this particular project, this is not what we want to use, because this is going to be milestones, right? So we're not going to bill against a particular profile. So we'll just remove that. And frankly, we can remove that under settings. So we can remove this this billable task because we're not going to actually bill the customer for our time spent. This is a fixed price project based on milestones. But just because we have a milestone project doesn't necessarily mean that we're not going to bill time. So maybe it's milestones, a set project price, plus time worked on for particular consultancy profiles. So there's no reason why we can't mix and match different options in order to achieve exactly what we want to achieve. So now in our project, this one right here, we can say that this is now in progress. We can move into it. We can start creating our Kanban view, our stages. So maybe we just want to create new, in progress, and we can call this complete. And let's build out so we already have new here, so I'll just delete this. And we'll just create a new task. We'll just call this phase 1. And maybe we assign this to John here, and we'll add. So now we have a new task for John for phase 1. When we click inside of that task, we can give this a milestone. So this is going to be related to planning. We have John assigned to it. Maybe this is going to take us 40 hours to complete, or let's say 10 hours to complete. We can give this a deadline, and we'll say that this deadline is March 3rd. We can tag this, write some description, start timesheeting against this. So maybe John's working on it, planning project, and they'll complete some hours. Let's say that they completed it 10 hours. We're on time for this. We can save, and maybe we mark this as complete or in progress and then complete. We can also upload documents here, so I'll just show you that. So if we need to upload a particular document and attach it, we can simply upload a document here. So let's see what I can upload. Just upload this image. And we'll go back to phase 1, and we'll see that this is also in the chatter here. If we did something here and we uploaded an image, let's upload another image. And now we have an image in our description here. We'll save that. And now we have 2 documents. They're in the chatter and they're in our documents module. So we can go ahead and go to our documents module at any time, look at our projects. We'll look at sale order number 13, and we'll see our 2 documents here that we've tied to our particular project. So now back in projects, we'll go into sale order number 13 again. We'll move this to complete. And now let's say that phase 1 is complete for this project. So here we'll go into our sale order. Our project manager might go into our milestones, mark it as complete, or go to our project updates, where we can see a lot more information about our project. We can mark this as complete, so planning is now complete. We can create a new project update, and we'll see that the project update will say planning or milestone 1, planning complete. We can update the progress of this project, so we'll say we're 20% complete, and we see the milestone is crossed off, when this milestone deadline was, when it was reached. So this gives us a good overview of the success and health of the project. Write a summary down here and any other information that you need to complete that is relevant to this project. So we'll go ahead and save that. And as a result, this project is now ready to be billed for milestone 1 because we just completed it for planning, and now we should bill the customer. Before we do that, I do want to look at a couple more settings. Obviously, this is pretty generic. We just build one thing, but we can look at our timesheets. We see timesheet overall project, the description of this. We can view it in a pivot table if necessary, so we can see hours spent and timesheet cost. Because we had $50 per hour at 10 hours for John, we billed $500 of our cost so far to this project. Now, let's go over to sales. And once we look at sale order number 13, we can go to orders to invoice. Our accounting department can come in here whenever they're ready to start invoicing customers, and they'll automatically see that we're ready to bill $10,000 to customer 4. So they can come in here and click create invoice. You'll see down here that we delivered 0.2 of the overall project, or you can select these in mass, go to action, and create our invoices. We can click create a regular invoice, create and view invoice, Or if you want to go in here again, you can just click create invoice from here and that same wizard pops up. So now you'll see sale order number 13 automatically has that analytic account tied to it, or this invoice has sale order number 13 analytic account tied to it, so that we're tracking both revenue and costs associated with this project. So once we confirm that, this will be tied directly to the overall project, and we can view all of that information within our accounting. If we go to analytic items, we can see under sale order number 13, we have $500 of cost and we have $2,000 of revenue. Now we can also tie that to a budget. So if we wanted to, we can tie all of that information to a particular budget. And in order to do that, we can either do it through our projects app. We can add a budget right here. So this budget is going to allow us to track those costs and revenue and tie them to an overall budget of the project. So we can do it from here again, or we can go into the accounting app and do it from the accounting module. So let's take a look at doing it from the accounting module. So in accounting, we can go to configurations, we can go to our budgets. So we have our budgetary positions, which we'll talk about, but we also have our overall budgets that we want to create. Accounting actually, and go to budgets. So we'll create a new budget here. We'll say S13, so sale order 13, budget. We know the date, so we know that this is going to be for March. Well, actually, let's just set it for February because we already billed some time against it, and the time that we billed was actually in February, not in March, so I want to make sure that it shows up, so I'll just do it for the 2 months. Now, under our budget lines, we can select a budgetary position, and the budgetary position is essentially going to be which general ledger accounts do we want to keep track of for this individual line. So I'm going to create a new one. I'm going to call this S13 revenue. S13 revenue. And for the analytic account, or sorry, for the general ledger accounts, we're going to take product sales and we're going to save that. We're going to select an analytic account. So the analytic account is going to be the actual analytic account filter that we want to look at. So it's going to look at everything inside of all of the accounts we select on our budgetary position and then filter them by only the ones that have this analytic account. So the analytic account that we want to use is sales over 13, and we have our start and end date and our planned amount. So maybe because we know this project should cost $10,000 or bring in $10,000 of revenue, that's fixed. We're going to enter it there. And then we're also going to do S13 cost, or we'll say employee cost. We'll create and edit that. And we'll add salary expenses as one of our expense accounts that we're going to track with the same analytic account here. Same time frame, and let's just say that we expect this to cost us $5,000 total. So now our net margin for this entire project should be $5,000. We can save this, and you'll see automatically that we have already achieved $2,000 of this revenue. And you'll notice that there's no amount for our employee cost added here yet. And the reason for that is because our budgets only take into consideration analytic lines that have a journal entry attached to it, or any journal entry that has an analytic account attached to it. So when we timesheet, that creates a analytic line that is attached to our analytic account, but it does not have a journal entry tied to it until we set one based on our salary expenses that come in from our bank account. So we'll take a look at that full scope of how we accomplish that. There's one more thing that I want to add to this, and this is just going to be overall expenses. So I'm going to say sales 13. I'm going to say other expenses. Maybe this is travel or any other cost that you want to consider besides our employee cost. So I'll go ahead and create and edit this, and we'll just add our generic expense account here, and I'll save and close. We'll set that same analytic account, and we'll say maybe this was going to be $500. So now our total margin that we're expected is $4,500. So we can confirm this budget to put it into place. Maybe it gets approved. We won't worry too much about that. But now let's take a look at our analytic line for our employee costs that we are already incurred. So we'll look at our analytic items. We'll go to sale order number 13, and we'll take a look at project planning. And this was our $500 that we've incurred based on, I believe, John billing against this project. And you'll notice down here there's no journal item attached to it. And this is because, again, we're going to attach a journal item based on the salary expenses that we incur when we reconcile our bank statement. So how do we do that? So the way we do that is by going into our bank account when our payroll runs and our line comes in. So you might have a line such as, salary expenses and then salary taxes or something. It might be split, something like that. We won't care about the salary taxes right now. We'll just go into operations here. We'll create a new line, and let's just call this salary expenses. And whatever salary expense was incurred, so this might not be the exact amount that is on those analytic lines. This is going to be your total payroll, right? So maybe this total payroll is $10,000 or maybe it's $15,000. Whatever that case may be, this is going to be come in as a bank statement line in your bank account. Now, as a result, you're going to have an item to reconcile. Keep in mind, the point of this video is not to teach you accounting, but if you sync your bank account or upload your bank statement here, you're just going to have those items that exist when you reconcile these items. You'll see your salary expenses here. We're going to select our salary expenses, something to reconcile. Maybe we go into manual operations here and we're going to select the account, which is going to be our salary expenses. And we can give this a partner. We can rewrite this label here. Maybe we say salary expenses and the date. We say this is Feb 25. And we can validate this. So the point of that was to create the journal entry to recognize our salary expenses. So that's going to be on our profit and loss statement now. If we go to our expenses, we can see our salary expenses in our general ledger. And that was the one that we just created for $15,000 here. But in our journal or our analytic lines, so under our analytic lines, so let's go to analytic items. We're going to select all of our timesheet entries. So if we click into this, this is a timesheet entry. We can filter this by anything that was a timesheet entry, timesheet line. And we'll see these are all of our timesheet lines. If we had a ton of projects, obviously right now it's simple because we have just one project that we're looking at, but we might do this for a particular date. So this might be for our entire month of February, or if we want to have a date specific to the last 10 days, for example, right? We might say is between, and we select the dates that our payroll was run on. And then based on that, we'll select all of these and give it a journal item. So we'll go here, select a journal item that we're going to tie to this. And the one that we're going to tie to this is our salary expenses. We could also do that at an individual item. So if we clicked in here, we might say that the financial account is the salary expenses, and we're going to look at our salary expense. And that salary expense one, the one that we're going to look at here is the $15,000. We see the date here that we selected. So it's going to be this one here, and save. Now, because we did that and we tied the journal item to our analytic lines that were created on the behalf of the timesheet entries, we can then look at our budget, and we'll see that the budget now includes our expenses for our employee salary. Now, the last line we have here is general expenses, and this can be done in several different ways. So the first default way is by, maybe we incur some expenses. We bought some product that we needed to build out this project, or we just had some basic vendor bill or some traveling costs. At the end of the day, we're going to end up with some sort of vendor bill, and we'll just say this is vendor one. We can select an item, or we can just write in a label. Maybe this was meal with client that needs to be re-invoiced or accounted for this particular project. So here we're going to select a sale order number 13, and we're going to tie all of this cost. Let's say this is $300, and let's set a bill date, confirm. And now we incurred some other expense tied to our overall project budget. And we can see that project budget. We can look at S13 and we'll see that we incurred $300 to our other expenses. Now you'll notice this is in red here. And the reason why it's in red is because we have some achievement percentage based on the start and end date. You have a theoretical amount of where you should be at this point in time based on the life cycle of the project. If we wanted to set a paid date, this means that the theoretical amount is going to take this start paid date in order to calculate the theoretical amount. Now, we want to view that in our projects module, of course, to see the overall health of the project. So we can go here and look at our project updates, and we can see all of our budgetary positions with the forecast, the actuals, and the difference. So our forecast right now is going to be $4,500 net profit, whereas our difference currently is minus 3,300 based on, so this is the difference, so what we need to achieve. So going forward, this is the actual. So right now we're at positive 1,200, and as we incur more expenses and recognize more revenue, this is going to update in real time. At the overall project level, we have all the tasks, any planned hours, documents, invoices, vendor bills, time and planning, everything associated with this project. Now you can also incur expenses directly through the expense module. So if you have the expense module configured and employees is submitting some expense, and we won't go through this whole process, but just know that you can go into expenses. Your employees can submit expenses either based on their company credit card or company card or out of their pocket where they need to reimburse. But the main point here is that you can set an analytic distribution here, and we can tie an analytic account to this expense so that the expense works against the project. You can also elect to re-invoice a particular customer for a project if you're billing on time and material. Now we went over one example of a project. I want to go over a couple more examples. We won't go into the details of creating the project and managing the project now, but for the next examples, I'll just show you how we can consider different use cases that we might use within the projects module as it relates to the type of products we're going to set up. So we did an overall milestone one. Let's look at our services. And we have another one here. We have engineering consultant. So if we're billing based on a particular profile, so maybe we can bill on a prepaid amount. So we'll create a new one. Let's just say that this is a mechanical engineer. This is going to be a service project. This is going to be prepaid or fixed. And we'll create a task. And now we want to select a project. So we're going to do this based on hours. We can plan our services. We'll say that this is $100 an hour that we're selling it for. And we need to set in our project here. So I want to create a new project. So we're going to say that we'll actually change this. Let's call this implementation. And maybe we just have implementation services that we charge by 100-hour packs, let's say 100 hours, similar to how Odoo handles quick start projects. And we'll say here that the project is going to be implementation. Oops. Let's create and edit this project. It's not going to have one particular customer because we're just going to create a task within the overall project that each individual task is going to be managed from there. We can have a project manager for the overall project, no set plan or allocated hours, and under settings here, we don't need to set any of these particular items. We'll just go ahead and save and close this, and we're going to mark this as a consultant. Let's say implementation consultant. And we can select the resources that can complete these implementation consultant work. So maybe we select Sarah here, and maybe as many as you want, right? Sarah, Jane, whatever the case may be. We can give it a color, save and close that. And now we have an implementation service that we're going to sell that is going to be prepaid number of hours. So now we can go to a sale order. We'll create a new sale order. We'll call this, let's say, customer 5. We'll add our implementation services. We'll say this is 100 hours. So the total cost is going to be $10,000. Again, now we'll confirm this. And now we have created one task within our implementation project, and we have 100 hours to plan in our planning module. So the first thing we're going to do is plan out who's going to work on this project. And this is going to assume here that we're going to bill on full time. And then we can click on plan orders. So this is going to plan our order automatically based on the week that we're looking at. So we can view the week, we can view the month, we can view the year. So if we're viewing the year here, we can select plan orders, and it's going to select one of our resources where whoever's available, and it's going to plan out all of the hours they're going to work into the future. So let's go ahead and just click plan orders here, and now we can view the shifts that were created. So we have Jane here who is going to bill this February and in March. So let's go to the month view. She has some hours in February, some hours in March, and we see that the system automatically allocated some of our hours, or all of our hours. So we billed the total 100 hours to the client. We planned the total 100 hours. We have not billed anything yet. We can publish all of these. So we're setting these in stone. Let's publish this as well, because that one brought in from February. And now we have 40, 40, and 20. Now if we went back to our sale order, we can see we have the 100 hours planned. And if we look at our planning module as a whole, we can see all of our resources and what they have to do by week. So we see Jane here is completely booked for the week from the 27th to the 3rd. She's booked for 40 hours. We have Danny with some hours booked. John has some available hours, so he has 16 hours Monday and Tuesday that we can put in for a particular project or overlap some other project. You can drag and drop these. This allows you to plan your resources over a period of time, and this can be used for really anything that you need, from your employees to just resources in general. So maybe you have some equipment that needs to be used and you need to track the usage of that equipment in planning. You can do that, and that can be considered a resource as well. So now that we've planned those hours, we can track planned hours versus actual timesheeted hours. This is going to give us a good insight of efficiency and how well we're doing of keeping track or on track of a project, as well as allocation and overall efficiency utilization for an employee. So again, if we go back into that sale order number 14, we have the task and the project. If we went to other info here, we can see all the information. No analytic account was created because we built it to a project that does not have an analytic account. We can create one if we wanted to, or we might not want to necessarily care about this. It's a prepaid hourly fixed price. In our projects here, we can look at our implementation project. So implementation's right here, has one task. And this is a good time to edit what this task is called. Maybe we call this an implementation. There we go. Save that. And now the employee can come in here and start working and billing time against this particular implementation. So we might have this as, well, new, in progress, complete. And we'll just move this into new. We'll say that this is ready to go. And now it's ready to assign to one of our implementation consultants. We planned out who that was going to be already. So maybe it was Jane. Whoever it might have been, we can set it here. And then they can use this and create subtasks, so they can plan out the subtasks for this project, or they can just use the description to chatter and utilize and build this project as needed. This doesn't necessarily have milestones attached to it because we're just using a single task within an overall project. Now, this is a good time to mention that, as I mentioned before, those subtasks can be related to another project. So again, if you had a development team that needed to work on a particular aspect, or maybe you had a data cleaning team that needed to import some of the data and that wasn't Jane's job, you can have a whole project that is, data cleaning or development, and then she can make a new subtask and assign it to a different project where they can go ahead and complete that task. And once it's completed, they'll still see the overall project and the scope for this particular task and implementation for sale order number 14. So we looked at so far billing a fixed price as well as a milestone project. Now the next thing we want to look at is billing for particular timesheets. So let's go back into our inventory. We'll look at our products and we'll look at our service products. Now I'm going to look at engineering consultant, and we also have our project manager here. So we have our engineering consultant. What I did when I created this one is there's a couple of options essentially that I want to think about here. We have our variance, and for variance, we have our rate and our multiplier. So sometimes you might have a particular consultant that is working either a junior or senior consultant that is billing at different rates, as well as maybe you are charging for different rates based on if it's standard time or overtime, maybe double time on the weekends, and you need to charge your customer appropriately. This gets a little confusing, so the simpler the better. If you can just have one price and maybe you just work standard hours, it's going to work beautifully. But I did want to mention because this does come up every so often. So we can elect to utilize variance to achieve this, or we can create different products for each one of these values. Doesn't necessarily matter, it's whatever you prefer. Here we have a service based on timesheets. We're not going to create anything on order, and we can plan these services appropriately as an engineer. Now, it gets more tricky planning out services based on variance such as standard and overtime, because it's likely that you don't know that it's going to be overtime, or you might start building out your project breakdown structure or your overall project overview, and you're gonna start planning out all of your different essentially the budget of the project probably before you sell it. You're going to get a general idea of what it might take to charge your client, what you should estimate the total cost of the project is going to be. But the bigger the project, the more complex it becomes and the harder it is to manage, which is why you're going to be using a software to begin with. Now, Odoo works perfectly for those smaller projects, but there's really no great solution for these larger projects. It's always going to have some level of human interaction in order to make things kind of plan them correctly and make sure all of your resources are allocated. So here I'm just going to talk more theoretical of how you can handle some of these different edge cases. So let's say that we have a project and this project is estimated at $100,000 sale price, and we estimated our cost at $50,000. Well, we might have 5 different employee profiles working on it. We might have an engineering consultant that is either junior or senior. They might be billing at standard or overtime. We have our project manager that might be a junior or senior, standard or overtime. We don't necessarily know who's going to be billing at the time of creation of the project. We just know that in general, we might bill 200 hours of engineering time, 200 hours of project management time, 100 hours of development time. It's just kind of I guess a guesstimate, right? We're going to use some of our information that we have from previous projects, but at the end of the day, we're going to put whoever we have on the project to make sure that the project is successful. So in this case, we might not know how many hours or have a particular number of hours that we're going to set for each one of these variants. We're just going to say, in general, the project is going to cost around $100,000, and whatever the actual cost is what we're going to bill the client. So that's what we're going to take a look at now. In order to do that, we're going to create a new sale order. And we're going to, let's say this is customer 6. And for these much larger projects, you might have sections here where you say, project estimate. We're going to add a note here. So maybe overall project estimated to cost $100,000. And maybe we say actual rates will be billed. Now we might add another note. We say, 100 PM hours, 200 dev hours, and maybe 200 engineering hours. So now we want to create a new section, and we'll say rates, and we'll add our different products. So we're going to do our engineer. So let's say our engineering consultant. We have junior, senior, standard. So we'll add the junior standard. So now we have all of our different consultancy profiles. Maybe it's a little bit more complex of a project, so we're also going to add another section. Maybe this is going to be for material that we purchased that we need to re-invoice. So there's nothing here now, but maybe we will have it at some point. So maybe we'll add a note that says any material will be billed. Now we can save that. So we actually want to zero these out. We can leave them as one. It doesn't necessarily matter, but we don't actually know the cost of the project, or the number of hours rather that the project's going to take. We have an estimate here: 100 PM hours, 200 dev hours, and 200 engineering hours. But it's hard to say right now. It's going to be 50 junior, standard, 50 overtime, or whatever the split up might be. It's just a general consensus that the overall project, based on our previous experience, was again is going to be $100,000. It's estimated. We have some room for project errors or things that become out of scope. So we'll just save this, and basically we're just going to confirm this new order. Nothing's going to get created for us, and we're going to build these rates and build out a project separately. We can simply just confirm that nothing was created, but this is a new sale order. We can use these profiles in building out a project. So I'll go to our projects here. We're going to create a new project, and we're going to say customer 6 project. Just build out some stages. Again, we already went over a lot of this. And here we're going to go into settings, and this is where your project manager is going to come in, set up everything. This is for customer 6. We might have a plan date. Under invoicing here, we're going to start setting our employees. So maybe Danny's going to work on this. He's going to build to a specific sale order item. So he is a junior. This is his default sale order item. We have our project manager, which is going to be Kevin, and he has his default, so that he might be a senior project manager. And this is billed at 100 and 300. Now, important to note here that there are the overtime and double time rates that we might need to utilize. And in order to utilize that, the system is not going to know, because everyone has different time, overtime, and it doesn't necessarily handle that, but we can utilize our sale order item to switch which sale order we're billing to when we're actually billing. So inside of our projects, let's say inside of our customer 6, it's now in progress. We're going to create a new task. And let's say that this is an overtime task. So as we bill to this, if I'm Kevin and I'm the project manager, billing to it, it's going to select my default profile, sale order item I'm billing to. So maybe I bill 8 hours to this today, and maybe I start working on it overtime because something is on a deadline. I can then switch this to our overtime rate. So I'll say that project manager, so I only have the junior and senior. I didn't put the overtime rate. So let's just switch this and say that this is the engineering consultant senior standard, and this is going to be overtime. So 2 hours of overtime for today. We can save that. And as a result, if we go to the sale order, it's going to update those appropriately. So we have delivered 8 and 2 for the senior overtime. So now we can create an invoice. We can select a time period of time that we're going to bill, we're going to charge for this invoice. And now we see the amount of hours that we just had from that invoice, or from that sale order. So 8 and 2. We can confirm this. If we go back to our sale order, we see the amount of units that we have invoiced. Now, I set these to 0 just because, let's say, we're unsure, But you can always elect to set these to the number of hours that you estimate. So maybe you have a percentage, right? Maybe you say on all of our projects, usually we're going to do, if it's 100 hours of project manager work, maybe it's 50 hours and 50 hours, or maybe here for our consultants, on average, maybe they work 20% of their time overtime or 10% of their overtime. So we might say 10 here and 90, and this is going to be split between a junior and a senior evenly. So now you have an overall cost structure, and you're still only going to bill based on the delivered quantity, so it doesn't necessarily matter. And this gives the customer a better overview of the cost of the project and all the rates and everything with some estimates. But then you're actually just going to bill them the invoiced amount, and at the project completion, you can compare what you thought it would be for each one of these different rates versus what it was. So I did want to just give you some of that idea of what it might cost. Now, in this particular project, it would be very beneficial to create that budget, try to stick to that budget, and then keep track of the budget over time to see exactly where you went over, if you went over, if it's on track to succeed. So from here, I just want to quickly look at some other general settings that we might want to look at. And we cover some of them briefly throughout the project, but let's look at this sale order number 12 here. We can look at our timesheets and planning. So actually, let's go to this one and we'll go to timesheets and planning. And we see our planned hours versus our effective hours. So we did not plan anything for this particular project. Let's see. For our implementation, we can look at our timesheets and planning. So we have some of our planned hours versus our effective hours. And inside of timesheets, or actually in reporting and projects, we can go to our task analysis. We can look at all the different tasks for each individual person. We can look at this in a pivot view. We could look at the initially planned hours versus the hours spent by project or by employee. So if I want to say assignees, we can look at the initially planned hours versus the hours spent. So we can see how often they are on track based on the project manager's initially planned hours. Or maybe we want to track, which project managers set initially planned hours and how likely are they to go over their initially planned hours. We can use these stats to better estimate our future projects based on how often we go over to overcorrect and make sure that we are allocating the hours correctly. We can take a look at all of our budget items to see how often our projects are on budget based on costs and revenue. So all of that is extremely important to keep track of. This data is available to you throughout the system. So whether it's in a task analysis screen here for a particular project or for the overall billing of projects, whether it's in timesheets here. So if we went to timesheets and looked at reporting by employee or timesheets and planning analysis, all of our planned hours versus effective hours, our margin, effective margins, our non-billable hours, our planned margins, and our planned revenues. And we can filter this by month or by project. So we can take a look at our implementation here, planned revenues that we've, based on our billing and what we've sold, a customer 6 project here. So based on what we've invoiced as well as our costs and planned revenues. So again, it's hard to say for certain which data points that you want to measure, but just keep in mind that they're all here for you to measure your project success against. So this is a very long video. Again, the point of this video is to show you the different options inside of the projects module, see how you may utilize it, and really just give you some ideas of how you might plan out and plan using Odoo for your projects and how it can tie in from your sale order, from your products to your sale order integrating with projects, your projects integrating with timesheets, your timesheets integrating with accounting and our overall budget, as well as how we can use the Documents app to store your items, and then finally how you can allocate different expenses to a particular project's budget and how you can manage your budgets as a whole. The last thing I'm going to show you here is in dashboards, some of the built out dashboards for projects. You can use and look at all of your tasks, all the logs for the tasks, how many days it took to assign tasks, what you have in progress or different stages. You can see your top customers, top assignees, top projects based on hours logged. And this is all in here by default and all customizable, as well as your timesheets here, where you can see the employees who bill the most hours against customers, their billable rate, utilization, top tasks and projects, and how we build time year over year, or for a particular project. Here you can filter for the last 30 days. You can select a specific department or a specific employee to view their key metrics. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments.